Welcome to the Artmiabo Podcast, the show where we speak to fine artists, creative minds, and cultural backers from the African continent. I'm your host, Gift Enyadike. With me today is a man with over 20 years of experience in advertising and out-of-home media. He has worked with agencies such as Ogilvy Africa, Media Reach Nigeria, Grey South Africa, and JC Decor Africa. He is also the newly appointed CEO of the Artmiabo Agency, the first of its kind, and we'll delve into that a bit more. But here he is, Mr. Dele Odugbemi. Thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing today?
Hi, Gift. Nice to be here.
Thank you. So I know I did a bit of a table setting and giving people the cliff notes, but could you please, in a bit more detail, introduce yourself to our viewers who may be unfamiliar with you?
Sure, and thanks for having me. My background is mostly media, but as one got along, got into business as for the most part, but business from the marketing communication perspective. So I started as a media planner in Media Reach in Nigeria, and then had the fortune of going to South Africa to work on a lot of brands, South Africa Tourism, MultiChoice, back then some international. That was while I was at Ogilvy, and then I left. Well, I was still in Ogilvy, but I went to work on the Airtel campaign in Kenya. So I was in Kenya for about 2 years. And then I returned to Johannesburg, and then I joined a company called, at the time it was Aegis, but in the present day it's called Dentsu. But the specific company I worked with there was called Kara. So that was a very good experience. Again, still a media specialist, and so that side of the career was growing. And then at some point I returned to Nigeria to work with a company called MediaShare. So then I had been away from Nigeria for about nearly 10 years, and to test the market again with now new knowledge, new structure, new template, if you like, was a very interesting challenge. And then I did that for about 3 years and returned to South Africa when there was an opportunity to drive Grey advertising into Africa. So what happened was Grey was newly bought. They bought a medium-sized company in South Africa, and then wanted to take that to the rest of the continent. So I got to do that. It was a very interesting project that we started with no affiliate. And when I finished that project about 3 years later, it had 35 affiliates in Africa. So I've been fortunate to be there at the startup, level, and then see what it transforms into. I've not had that in my career where I'm part of a business that is already ongoing. Most times as you're starting, you're shaping that up, you're determining what your success factors is, and then you are executing, and then you find out years later that it worked. So that was great. And then afterwards, I got recruited by Justico to do a project for them in Nigeria, which happened. I didn't expect it to be that long, but it included the COVID period. So I ended up being in Nigeria for 3 years, and then brought back to South Africa as the head of Africa, and then did that up until sometime 2024. Got into business consultancy, and when the founder of Nebel, first of all, spoke to me about, look, your career is advertising. This is that those two comes together to begin to champion the work. It needs to be sold, it needs to be marketed, but maybe also develop products around it, which my experience developing product for media owners, advertisers, and so on, we reckon we would be able to do that. And again, it's a startup project, so it starts being exciting because you're doing the hard work of laying the foundation and all of those things. So that's been the journey.
Yes, that's been incredible. I think you delved a little bit into your relationship with Miabo Nyadike, the founder. Back in 2022, when Artmiabo International Art Festival was first launched, you were a big help in getting it out there, getting it known. I think at the time you were still with JC Decor.
Mm.
Can you tell us a bit about when the festival itself was pitched to you and what made you personally believe in it?
It was pitched as well at that time. It was an idea that was just being bounced around. From that perspective, I mean that, like, I had experience in media and could tell what types of sponsors could be attracted with that kind of product. And then I realized that it hadn't actually happened with us before. We didn't have anything that was a gold standard in terms of measurement of what that kind of festival would be. So I not just was a part of like the sitting together and thinking of what the standard should be, but also I I was in the process of returning South Africa at the time, but I made sure I was in Lagos for that festival when he held. I could only attend a single day, but that I gave a talk on the issue of copyright, I believe. That, there is that tendency to think of the property as only the artwork and the physical existence, but there can be a virtual, there can be and your rights actually still permits all of that. So it's to let, the artist think of revenue beyond the frame to expose that look, business have many opportunities to sell, and unless you package that recognizes those opportunities, you will limit yourself to the frame, for example. So that was interesting. Yeah, so I was very excited to be a part of it. So I hadn't been in Lagos the same time all the other years is held, but I was very happy to be a part of the first one.
And now with your new position as the CEO of the agency, I did mention, it's the first of its kind. It's the first
Mm,
agency for artists
mm,
dedicated to that collaborative innovation between artists and big corporations. You talk about things like copyrights and rights. That's a very big one in
mm,
particular. But before that, you'd already known Miabo Nyadike for many years,
mm.
professionally and personally. How did she approach you specifically about this position? A bit more about that, and what really made you accept it? I know you said you love to work with startups and with new projects
Yeah,
because then it's exciting because you actually have a chance to just take this from point A to point B. But
yeah.
I'd like to know exactly about what this project specifically. What is it about about this company, this agency that made you go, yes, I'll take this position?
Oh yeah. So frankly, it wasn't something I had thought of before. I was like a business consultant. I was managing a couple of projects that were in the incumbrancy as well. But when I got the call, and she said, "Let's me, I think it was for lunch and talk about some things," and she already gave me ideas of what she was talking about. So naturally, I wanted to encourage her on that direction because I think my best way of explaining it will be Uber. To recognize that Uber as a product is Google Maps plus the taxi industry.
Yes.
Both had existed before Uber, but Uber was able to bring those two things together, right? So that was my thought about it. That look, the media industry existed, and we service clients and do also all manners of things, and we develop media products and whatever it is, and we take that from what we take to be a creative industry. The creative work is done, 50-second TV ad, something that goes onto Google, whatever it is. So we take a plug in to be the creative industry. And then from the conversation, it was very clear that this other side of it, which itself is creative, right? But not formally a part of the advertising industry. So the art industry is taken to be a completely different side, and advertising. And like I said in the in the Uber example, do those two come together? And it can, if you line it up, because what's Uber? That's like a very convenient way for you to call a taxi, kinda. But they give you data in terms of the quality of the driver that's coming to you. Is that 4,000 miles? Is that now the taxi industry didn't do that. He had a coat of paint, and then you should trust his ability to take you from point A to B, right? So sometimes it's data that is the underlying thing that bring two supposedly different industries, that bring it together, that makes it something that works. And sometimes it's something else. It's just the fact that maybe we're not looking at it before. You thought it would be this way, and then all of a sudden, opportunities start spinning out, and things like that. Recently, we worked on a project around developing like a bottle for an alcohol brand. Now that like there's a way it looked, but you could maybe give like artists like a year and they could design you a new bottle. See, like typically maybe that could have gone to an advertising agency, but you're in business as well, so why not? So it's a question of who puts the best forward. And we've joined into a game that we're previously excluded from. Right. So that's just the when you have thinking that's outside of the industry that you're trying to maybe make new things work in, the experience you've had from elsewhere added to what they have, like, it creates that Uber, if you like, a certain work stream, another work stream. All of a sudden, it's aligned, and you're talking about a completely different business. So that's it.
This is an art podcast. So I'd like for you to paint a picture for us of your vision for the Artmiabo brand and the agency going forward. If you have anything that you can discuss, of course, you have to keep certain things close to the chest, but anything that you can discuss would be nice to hear.
At the moment, it's like I said, it's a startup that is looking at opportunities. But your question was about the vision, which will be at some point, it has very, very talented artists on his stable that it represents locally and internationally. I can see that coming. That this talents get to develop products that had not even been thought of before. So there's a bit to do to get there, which would be putting the team together, having like robust agency level contracts, so there will be a journey to it. But ultimately, we're having a conversation 5 years from now, and we want some things ticked off as to what we would want to have done. That would be it. That there's the specialized products that the companies sell. Products could be a service, but that's, I'm now in the revenue business and recognize that, again, Uber will recognize itself as car hailing, or you need food and bring it to you. Now, those are two different things, but it comes off the same platform. So that you when you have a platform, you start thinking of how you can expand the many other things you can do, what can ride off the platform and the likes of it. So yeah, it's that level of thinking, gradually building the team. But yeah, if this was 5 years from now and we want to call ourselves a success story, it would be the ability to have all of those things, in the modern day, they would say you monetize it, and that you are now in your fourth, fifth year where it's shown as something that works. Yeah, that'll be it.
Yeah. So this was the bonus question that's, as you were speaking before, that actually came into my mind. And that is, that we're talking about artists and trying to get artists, giving artists the kind of work that you would find for advertising agencies and whatnot. But I think a recent factor that's, been very massive in the creative spaces, that being the use of AI for the generation of art and media, and like various companies just making entire what would have taken somebody, a 30-second video that somebody would have spent.
Seconds now.
Yeah, that they've been doing that. Coca-Cola recently did it over Christmas. That's a recent example, but there are various others. So I guess my question here is what stance you guys, the Artmiabo Agency, will be taking on that, and also how you would intend to either utilize it or combat it, or just how you would approach AI going forward, especially when you're trying to get teams and artists into these places.
The thing that's fundamental in all of that is first to recognize what AI is, which is frankly a machine that learns to produce content at a much more efficient way, but it's drawing from what it knows. Now, the artist is drawing from ingenuity. So there is a craft there. You cannot, there can be various forms of something that already exists, right? But you find that when you're looking for something original, because that's human-like talent, that's like, you see, you went to school and you got trained in a certain way, but you're applying yourself oftentimes beyond what that training is. So that's the human side of intelligence. Now, artificial one is frankly made up. So to answer your question, is this something that should compete, or is this something that should complement? It's down to how we look at it. The first attitude is like, replace us, replace blah, blah, blah. That's not looking at it fundamentally for what it is. You can unplug it. You can't, a guy who competes with you really must be able to go to an interview with you, and blah, 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 and be taken like this guy is better. But some guy that you can just unplug, that it stops working from that point, come on, that's not a real competitor. So it was just like the way the computer got into our lives and became every day in our work, Our podcast right now, it didn't require for us to be in the same setting, and prior it would have. But at the time when it started, it was thought it would replace so many other things. And people never talk
Yes.
about how efficient you could get, how much better you could get. Because if you don't spend time doing the stuff that's manual, you could take time to do the things that are more strategic. So to me, it's
True.
complementary. It's not an either or thing. It is like, oh, here's another tool. I've been living in my life. I've been doing it this way. There was this part that was very manual, but here's this tool that helps me make it. I would like that tool if I approach it that way. But if I thought it was replacing me, then I'll be thinking, let me not give you enough information, whatever else. So I don't think the introduction of that platform, if you like, into the creative
Yeah.
business is positive. It's that you know what it is. I think of the movie industry when they needed to do the action sequences. They needed to do them at some point on like a mini set that will give you the impression
Yes.
of far bigger. Then at some point, the set got bigger, was green screens and all of that and all of that
Yes. CGI
made
and
it made it
CGI
made
and
it
the
more
like.
believable CGI and stuff. And now here's another iteration. Just I bet it was always there. It was just as technology got better, the ability to see all of those things that complement, again, if that's the attitude, that complement stuff you're doing, then it kind of makes sense. So that's my attitude to it. It's not a thing to fear. It's a thing to embrace. There are dark days ahead. Yes, when you don't
Yeah.
know stuff, when you're not sure of what plays out and how it will play out. That will happen, but humanity has been faced with many of such, and it always tends to work out well. So that's my attitude to it. At the moment, we don't know, but staying off from it is not wise because then the market leaves you behind.
Yeah. But I think on the other side, because I had a couple years in the agency space myself, nowhere near as much as you, but yeah. And I guess one thing, the big thing that I learned in that time was, there are two things that the company that, your clients, the big companies, they value the most, that being the amount of money that they're spending
Mhm.
when they have a campaign or whatever it is that they want made. So it's money that they're spending, but most importantly, it's time.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned before, the use of AI is it cuts time in half. So how would you, I guess, go about? Let's say you approach a company.
Mm.
How would you go about coming here with, these are our artists. They're really good at this and
Hmm.
this. How would you convince that company that this artist that you are bringing towards them
Representing,
is a
yeah.
better option than for them to just go, "Oh, we can just get an AI prompt to do something for us." How would you go about doing that?
Like any pitch, any sales pitch, you want to show how you're different. So if you saw the Coca-Cola AI one over Christmas, and I don't
Yeah.
know if I don't know if you're familiar with maybe always Coca-Cola or previous Christmas hits that Coca-Cola
Yes.
has had. And I promise you there's a remarkable difference. That is the one that comes out of crafts and the one that is polished and looks automated. So is the desired taste. A friend of mine that we're having a conversation about what's gonna happen when AI is mainstream and dominate, blah blah blah. Like how like music you could stream, and yet there are the music lovers that go after the records because that has more meaning
Yes.
to them. So all of a sudden, rather than kill the record, it actually extended its life. So one did not replace the other. And that's
Yes.
my outlook to it. So you stick to what you're selling. You stick to your story. I have original paintings that come from artists who they're not a machine. And again, I'm just not overwhelmed by this idea of something can automatically generate something. Because if you think of our line of business as content on the one side and platform on the other side. So you might, by embracing the platform as the side that automates how it broadcasts to certain channel, how it does whatever, then you have embraced without altering what the original product is. Do you get what I'm saying? That is not either or.
Yeah.
It's not, that's not the good way to look at it. Is that here is what I do, but I recognize in the modern day, here is the how, say, for example, it gets to the audience, whatever, and you are plugged in that. So you're not left behind. But your originality, what you are good at, because that's not what the machine learning produces. The CEO of Starbucks once was asked, why is the coffee in Starbucks different? He said, well, he believes that they put their heart into it. And all of a sudden, it's a completely different product. All of a sudden, same cover you were making your house, same whatever. But if it's Starbucks, the pitch is we put I put our heart into it, and that's how you sell. There's that replacement theory, and like, look, this thing is better, it does it faster. Does this not end that other side of it? I'm not of that mindset, because many businesses could be replaced, but there are many businesses that would instead use it to actually improve themselves. And that is more where I sit, rather than like, no, I've been in those meetings before. That AI stuff, we don't do it. We don't even know anything about it and all that. Then you don't even know how good your own product, because you haven't benchmarked against it. It's good. So tell the client what that does. It's, something already from an existing concept, and you
Right.
just have iterations of it. That's really what it is. But this is original concept. This is something that I hadn't had before. The guy was inspired to do it. The lady was inspired to do it. And look at the ingenuity of what we're dealing with here. So there are people who would clothing, because they
Yes.
know what it takes to, and that would be their outlook of what that is in terms of pricing. No, I'm not of the mindset that one replaces the other. I think that there's room. And if one embraces it well, there's actually a way where it could lead to improvement. I think it's something to embrace, really.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that question. Very much spot on. Thank you for joining us for this episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to leave a like, a share, a subscribe. Thank you so much once again for joining us. We will see
Thank
you
you,
all
Gift.
next time.
See you next time. Take care.